of the rights of the minority. So the government utilizing its majority, its inherent majority in the parliament to suppress the voices of the minority. And that is the reason why you have a speaker as a presiding officer to ensure that this does not happen.
Just a follow-up on that, can the opposition seek to have that same motion debated on another private member's day?
Well, we can't. No, we are constrained by that. It was a motion that has been on the order paper, and what transpired last week, Friday, literally removed that motion off the order paper.
Before I give it to my colleagues very quickly, state of emergency issue. In terms of what you would have said, Senator Arari, as it stands now, is the opposition satisfied? You raise the issue of no tribunal, etc., and so on, but that the state of emergency is in proper effect at this time, according to what you have said. Are you satisfied, though? It is in proper effect at this time?
Yes, the state of emergency is in accordance with the Constitution. The Constitution says, from Section 7, 8, 9, and 10, once the President has issued a proclamation, because the President was satisfied upon the material given to her that a state of emergency exists within the parameters of the Constitution, that is, you had a state of war, there's some kind of calamity that exists to such an extent that you ought to have a state of emergency, or that is an imminent threat, or something has just happened, or it's imminent. Those are the three circumstances. I'm putting it very simply because people get lost in all the text, right? So forgive me for being very direct. The Constitution says effectively you have three things that you could trigger a state of emergency for. One is war, one is calamity, and one is something that has just happened or is about to happen that is so serious that the public can be affected in terms of certain services. It does not say that crime fighting is a state of emergency per se if it's outside of those exceptional circumstances, right? So yes, the state of emergency is validly in effect. Within 3 days of the proclamation, this president's statement needs to be put into the House for a debate on it to happen. There's no vote on it. The statement is put and you debate the statement. And then the Constitution says for the state of emergency to be continued beyond 15 days, because look, the proclamation lasts, the state of emergency shall exist for 15 days unless you extend it. You can extend it for 3 months, but not more than 6 months without going to the Senate as well, right? So the state of emergency is valid. I'd just like to jump to something you asked the Leader of Government Business. Insofar as I was a member of the House for 10 years, I can tell you that I am aware that when we were in government, we did use standing orders of the Parliament 52 to close the debate on a motion of censure, right? So take note that you condemn that. In the motions that we're talking about, there's a material difference between the two. Let's compare apples with apples, mangoes with mangoes. When you have a motion that is critical of the government, that is the text of the motion, and you are in the situation where a member can move that the debate be closed, it's very different from exercising it in a private member's day. The motion that Minister Munilal wound up was on that of Kareem Marcel, which dealt with observations in the society. It didn't come out to necessarily critically condemn the government, that in the government censure them. It wasn't a motion of censure. But listen, the parliament is the place where you have the privileges of the parliament. Section 55 says you have privilege. You can't get sued. Why? Because they expect their MPs to be talking about things that matter without fear. The private members' day motion was talking about the fact that we don't have people in jobs. That is a serious thing. You see the Minister of Education talking about rise in violence during teaching time. So they put police in the schools and the violence didn't stop. It happened during teaching time now, not break time. What does that tell you? Those kids who are acting out in violent ways obviously have underlying issues. Is it that their parents unemployed for a year? When you have 100,000, listen, this is not make-up numbers. CPEP, 11,000. Forestry, 5,000. URP, 5,000. You get now into the regional health authorities. Thousands contracts were not renewed. You heard that the Minister of Education did not renew the teaching assistants, the aides to children. 500 people. The hundreds and hundreds add up. The 2,000 people in HDC. When you take the working population, let's conservatively say 80,000 people. It's not one person living in a house. You are a parent looking after at least 2 other people. In our extended Caribbean families, it might be more. So 80,000 multiplied by 3 or multiplied by 4, the effect upon children that have no food to come to school or whose parents can't buy, how do we know that that's not bullying during teaching time? So the motion was intended to speak to these matters and to only have 4 opposition members speak out of 13. It's not like the government don't have 28 people to answer the 13 people, you know. But under the Constitution, where you have the privilege, they expect you to deal with things that are rough. Look, I'm getting comments from people by WhatsApp telling me, Faris, boy, you're brave. You're calling out people's name. You had to be frightened. People are living in a state of fear in this country. The usual statement from people coming out is, look, I'm not criticizing the government here, but, you know, I'm supporting the government. But there is a sense of fear. The economy is on standstill. Expenditure is in difficult circumstances. But I've not been in Parliament as long as Mr. Imbert has. I've been there 16 years. I've never seen this kind of fear in our society about a government. Where there's fear to eat a work, eat a food, because you had to eat your work to get your food, right? People went, nah, boy, I ain't talking up, boy. I need a job. Hopefully I go get through. 20,000 people flooded the Ato Bolan Stadium. 1,600 of them were employed on short term. CPEP gone. The country looking like a disaster zone. The roads are no better. Is Forex any better? Listen, we're coming on 1 year of government, you know. Not 2 weeks. So this motion that was dealt with, yes, there's been precedent before in a motion of censure where you condemn an individual. I believe in that case it was the Minister of National Security that was being condemned. This is a very different scenario. And the point to us is that the democracy has to be preserved because you're supposed to speak for people in Parliament. And that's what it's about. That's why Brian Manning is called San Fernando East. Colum Imbert is Diego Martin Northeast. He's not his name. You looked at the name on the Parliament, his name is not there. You'll see his constituency there. Hopefully I've answered your question.
And as you speak about, just one more for me here before I give the microphone over to my colleagues. The year in government, 1 year anniversary coming up. But in terms of the opposition, what is the opposition's sense of the 1 year anniversary of it being in opposition as well?
I'm sure we'll have a special session on that, but I think that it speaks for itself right now. I don't think that anybody's surprised about the things that I just told you there. I mean, people are warning me to be careful about what I say. That says a lot, right? I think that everybody in here understands what I'm saying. We have 2 newspapers right now, Express and Guardian. The news is muted on significant affairs on some occasions. It's kind of like a recycled position. The media doesn't have access to the Honorable Prime Minister face to face. Hard questions are not being asked. The leader of the opposition makes herself available all over the country and at events. She made sure to meet with us before we came this morning. She had other engagements to go to. Our country, listen, democracy went to work. The government has an overwhelming majority. We had and still have to deal with the issues that took us into opposition, and they weren't small issues. We did a number of things we didn't do correctly or could have done better. We joined the government in the fight against crime. There's certain things that we support. Yesterday we had a very simple motion in the Senate a bill to put the laws online. But if you see the attitude of Saddam Hussein and Darrell Allaha, contemptuous attitude, where you're making observations, saying, listen, we're going to support the law, you know, but you may want to look at 5 things which will help you to avoid some problems, is spit and venom. What this country is seeing is a form of democracy that says, listen, if you step out of line, I'm going to bust your head.
I wanna just piggyback off of the point that Mr. Alwari made there, Jesse Ramday from CNC3 News, and perhaps invite Mr. Gonzalez to take this question regarding the same issue of democracy, right? Mr. Gonzalez, while articulating your point, you would have described what took place in the Parliament last Friday as a vicious and disdainful attack, right? You know, it brings into question the behavior of the Speaker of the House and his conduct, which you also mentioned. You know, the Speaker of the House is essentially supposed to be an independent arbiter, right? Are you and perhaps your colleagues concerned now that perhaps there may be some political compromise, censorship, etc. along those lines?
Okay, sorry. Can you ask the question again? Sorry.
Any concerns that, you know, the House Speaker is supposed to be this independent arbiter?
Well, the House Speaker is supposed to conduct the proceedings of the House to ensure that the traditions of our Parliament are properly maintained. The practice of the Parliament is preserved. The executive does not overwhelm and control the agenda of the Parliament. The standing orders of the Parliament are upheld. These are very important things, and you would expect any speaker, once they are appointed, doesn't matter if they are members of political parties, that once you're appointed Speaker of the House of Representatives, that you shed any biases you may have personally, and to conduct yourself in such a manner that the democracy and our parliamentary democracy is preserved.
I know.
Yes. Go ahead.
I know that a letter would have been dispatched today, right? While you're there, can you perhaps just articulate a bit more what was the content of that letter?
Yes. So
okay. Exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we will. Yeah.
All right, and we have a copy of the letter.
Yes.
But if this continues to progress, and you know the opposition finds that, you know, their voice continues to be overlooked, you know, can this be escalated by the opposition?
The opposition will continue to examine ways within the law to prosecute this matter, this very important, this very serious matter. What happened last week Friday, of course, we regard it as very serious and egregious, and we will continue to examine ways in which we will continue to educate the population on what is taking place in our parliament, and whatever lawful options that are available to us to address this very serious matter, we plan to do it within the confines of the law.
Just let me jump in here, and Mr. Ramdeo, I'm not accusing you of anything, but it is one of the fundamental errors an MP can make to accuse a speaker of bias, which is what your question was all about. Our letter does not accuse the speaker of bias. We simply disagree with the decision that he made. I want to make that crystal clear. No one here is accusing the speaker of bias. We're not stupid, and we're not falling into that trap. Okay?
That's my caveat.
Moving on from there, Kim, you have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Good afternoon, Kim Boudram from The Express. So sorry to go on and beleaguer the point, but still on topic, I guess. But my question, I don't want to get it wrong, is the opposition is taking, oh, no, sorry, it's the wrong thing. the opposition walked out on Dr. Munilal, but apparently in 2021, the former health minister, Mr. Dayal Singh, apparently also shut down a private motion that the UNC had brought
But
of no confidence in the Minister of National Security. Do we have that? Do I have that wrong then? Or we have that wrong? That's the distinction. Okay, it was not Private Members' Day.
and I think, well, Faris will come, but I think Faris spoke to that extensively in replying to Jula a little earlier. Yeah?
You'll see that in the letter.
Okay.
In the front of the letter, you will see that Private Members' Day is designed for members of the opposition to speak.
Yeah,
It's
I should have understood
it's a special day. Other motions that may come up from time to time that are critical of the government are not on Private Members' Day. That particular matter that you're referring to, as far as I can recall, I'm always subject to correction, was not on Private Members' Day. This is all about the whole framework, the origin, the purpose and intent of Private Members' Day, which is a day on which opposition MPs should be guaranteed the right to speak.
Not the same day. Okay, I'm
Just
clear.
to add very quickly, Kim, the Express carried that point today. Padarat condemns for hypocrisy, and then he made the reference to Minister Dayal Singh then in 2021. The point that I addressed, and just let me be very precise on it, that motion where Dayal Singh exercised the 52 standing order 52, was on a motion of censure against an individual. So where you are where a motion is critical of the government, that is when you have one of the triggers. The motion which happened, which the opposition was dealing with on Friday, was a different one. The motion was on not only on Private Members' Day, because it doesn't really matter what day you're on alone, right? The point is that the motion itself was not critical of the government. The motion was dealing with issues to observe and effect upon citizens in the way I just described to you. The privileges allow you to talk about the effect on people, joblessness, schools, violence, all of these things. So there's that. And then Member Gonzalez very carefully pointed out to you that the right of the minority. So where you have only 4 out of 13 people speaking, and you're now getting into it, and you have not heard from quote-unquote the heavy hitters, the leader of the opposition, other people, etc. It's a deliberate attempt to curtail, on Munilal's part, to curtail, etc. We can't speak about the speaker. You'd be hauled before the Committee of Privileges. So we can make no negative reflections, and we make none in fact, right? That's a different matter. The Parliament will deal with itself. I'm no longer a member of the House. There are very capable people in the House that can deal with that issue. But I just want to make it clear, we're not hiding from anything, and there's no hypocrisy here. A motion of censure against an individual is what was being dealt with. Very different circumstance. Okay?
Kim, if I may just add to that, I want us to be very clear. Nobody expects that the government is going to stand up and say that the opposition was correct in their position. So they will create the narrative. However, the motion that was brought before the House is treating with a very real problem in this country. And as members of Parliament, we are seeing it. As members of Parliament, they are seeing it. And what was done in the House, we have a right to stand up and say we disagree with that fundamentally, because only 4 of us had a chance to speak. So I just want to be very clear about it. We are holding the position that we have nothing to defend in terms of our own position that we took on Friday. All right? I don't know if there are any other questions, or if you do.
Just one more quick one.
Sure.
There were a lot of views in 2025 that the US's mobilization against cartels and narco traffickers and so on was more about energy resources and oil specifically. Is there any difference? Is it just the momentum carrying on from then, or is this Shield of the Americas operation? May there be anything different in it, or any different type of motivation in it, or is it just a carrying on of?
I will ask Dr. Brown to speak to you.
Thank you very much. We can't read the minds of our partners. Sometimes it's difficult even to read the minds of the government, the minds that are activated, that is. But as a responsible opposition, it is our duty to hold the government to account and to demand transparency and accountability of the government. That's our sworn duty. So I wish we could stand here and say, we take everything that the government is saying about this, this new coalition and this, their efforts against the cartels and so on, the government's efforts, at face value. We can hold hands, we can sing "We Are the World," but you have to look at the evidence. And a few moments ago, I gave the evidence as to what happened last year and what was the outcome, both with respect to the demobilization of the Armada, as far as we're aware, to a large extent. The Gerald Ford is elsewhere in the world, engaging in other activities. And clearly, the challenge of violent crime in this country was sufficient for the government and the Prime Minister to impose another state of emergency upon us. So we look at that as the evidence as to what transpired recently. But history, sometimes history is our best teacher. And sad to say, in many cases, wars on drugs in the past have been used as a facade for other objectives. That is a historical fact, especially in the Latin American region. I don't need to remind any informed journalist about the old Reagan days of the war on drugs, the Iran-Contra scandal. It's quite ironic that we could even talk about Iran. But just to remind you, there were allegations that the Contras back then were involved in some elements of the Contras were involved in cocaine trafficking. And there were allegations back then ventilated in the U.S. Congress and other levels within the U.S. political system that arms were being sold to Iran and the proceeds of those sales were being used to fund the projection of U.S. interests at that time in Latin America, all under a general rubric, ironically, of a war on drugs then. Not to say that that's what's happening now, but to issue a call for not just blind optimism in treating with these matters. It is the responsibility of a prudent government to look for the devil in the details and to ensure that anything we associate the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and our citizens with can stand the light of scrutiny and will stand the test of time. And the history of some of these coalitions, especially those that are formulated around more of a political agenda and formulation, is that they do not stand the test of time. And when administrations change and political realities change, where does that leave the smallest players, such as the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago? So it's just a call for prudence and wisdom, and it's certainly not a position that can be construed as anti-American. All past administrations worked very closely with the government of the United States of America. I myself, as Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, was in the office of the Secretary of State, hosted him, the former Secretary of State, here in Trinidad and Tobago, and there were flourishing exchanges and partnerships, very fruitful relations, which we always support. The recent past gives us some cause for caution, particularly as you see that wedge being established between Trinidad and Tobago and our vital interests within CARICOM. Just cause for caution, that's all.
I just want to deal with a matter raised by the media. I've done some research. Again, I'm subject to correction. But the previous occasion where Minister Dialsing invoked Standing Order 52-1, what I've seen is that there were 31 speakers in that debate. 3-1. And the debate went on for 10 hours straight. Unlike what happened on Friday, where after one opposition speaker on Friday, with 9 still to go, that was it. And in addition, that motion was moved because the person to wrap up the debate was absent. This was an opposition motion, and the then leader of the opposition was absent, was not in the chamber. So that person could not wrap up the debate because they simply were not there. Okay? So I want you to see the distinction between the two. One was, it was a motion of no confidence in Minister Stuart Young, and 31 people spoke in that debate for hours. Okay? So there was no question that the rights of the minority had been infringed. Of that 31, the evidence in there, a substantial number would have been members of the opposition. Maybe the whole opposition spoke, with the exception of the leader of the opposition. So it's chalk and cheese. There's no comparison between the two. I wanted to make that crystal clear because it's interesting the press brought it up because it means that they're bringing it up. They're trying to compare the two. There's no comparison between the two. I want to make that clear. You have a case where 4 opposition speakers spoke over a period of 2 days.
And the leader of the opposition did speak. She was the first.
Yeah, but she didn't wrap it up. Yeah. She piloted the motion, but she wasn't there to wrap up the debate. So the reason why the 52-1 was invoked is because she was absent and everybody had finished speaking. 31 people had spoken. No comparison between the two. Okay?
So, Mr. Imbert, if you don't mind, just one question to you quickly. You brought the issue of, it was brought up, the issue of additional revenue, of course, was always unfortunate and tragic. There's another cited for Trinidad and Tobago potentially as an oil and gas producing nation. This has come up recently, questions to the government and so on about that. From your perspective as a former finance minister, what are the potential benefits or challenges with regard to increases in oil and natural gas prices globally, and the issue, of course, of present supply constraints, especially for natural gas in Trinidad and Tobago, if the country could benefit in any way or not?
It's really a double-edged sword. We don't know how long this war will last. If we listen to the United States, they're of the view it won't last very long. In 2022, we had the Ukraine war, which is still going on. In 2026, everybody thought that would be over in a month. 4 years later, literally 4 years, I think it was March of 2022, that the Ukraine war began, more or less. Ukraine war is still going on. And throughout fiscal 2022, the Ukraine war was there for the entire, second half of the fiscal, from March to September. So that war had a positive effect on government revenues from oil and gas. We don't know what is going to happen with this one. So we don't know whether, as I said, Dr. Munilal's boast that the coffers are going to be overflowing with riches because of the Iran war is going to bear fruit. The war may be finished quickly, we don't know. But what is interesting is that the President of the United States made a statement a couple of days ago that this war won't last long. And immediately, oil prices dropped. I don't know, for those who follow oil prices, you check that and you will see oil price was going up. It reached over $100. And then it dropped down to 80-something as soon as the President of the United States said this war will not last long. So we don't know what the beneficial effect of the war will be on the average price of oil for the year, because the government pegged its budget on a $73 price. And prior to the Iran conflict, it was running at $60, so that it was way below what the estimates would have been. So it may not even balance out. When you take the actual low oil price for the first 6 months of the year being way below the budget figure, then you might get a little jump for maybe 3 months or so, who knows. It may not realize the revenues from petroleum that are in the budget, that the budget was predicated on. But there's a other side of it. That's why I say it's a double-edged sword. Just today, we were talking to somebody from a shipping company, and they said shipping rates are already going up. They put a war surcharge on, containerized freight and so on, and insurance rates will go up as well. So we, in Trinidad and Tobago, little Trinidad and Tobago, we can't do anything about this, So if goods are coming out from that side of the world, being now subjected to a war surcharge and higher insurance rates and all that sort of thing, then the cost of goods for Trinidad and Tobago will increase significantly. That's why I say it's a double-edged sword. You might get a little more revenue, but you might get jammed with higher prices of consumer items because of the war surcharge on freight and so on. Okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of today's press conference. I do want to thank those of you who joined online and stayed with us despite our late start today, sticking with us, and of course to thank you for staying with us and for thanking the media for all of your questions, live and direct to us as the opposition presents itself to the country to ask questions and to answer them and continue the conversation about life in this country and the role of governance and how democracy is being impacted. We will speak to you again soon. Thank you very much.